work with small businesses. I work with solopreneurs on productivity, but it's not the productivity that we always hear about. So a lot of times when people think about productivity, they say, I need to be more productive. I need to get things done faster. I need to have a zero inbox. It's almost like a stress-induced thing to talk about productivity, and that's not really what I do. So I've been asked, do you sit in front of people and watch them work, and then give them a big old binder of the things they need to improve? And that's not what I do. That's pretty boring. I've been asked if you do the ergonomics, ergonomics. That's not what I do. So basically what I do is I help small businesses with their organizational development. I help create processes around work that needs to get done so it can be done in a more efficient way. And it's really about working smarter, not faster and harder. By the nature of the work I do, it turns out to be faster, but it's not a stressful thing like when you think about productivity and how it normally works. So I'm going to be talking about that. Let's see, what else did I want to say? So I think most of you work for small businesses. That's what I got from the introductions. How many of you feel like each day you're rushing to get things done, that there's like a million things going on, that you're constantly, it's just one thing after another? That's how a lot of us feel, especially in today's day and age. So I don't know if anyone's heard the story about the goldfish. It's not really a story, but about paying attention, focus. So apparently the goldfish has us beat. They have an attention span of 9 seconds, and we're at 8. So a few years ago, we used to be 12, and because of the electronic devices and everything that we have going on, we're down to 8. So hopefully you guys are still paying attention to me as I'm talking, because your attention span, I'll understand if you start to kind of waver. But what I'm going to talk about today is, again, productivity, but I'm going to talk about 3 different productivity personalities that I tend to see, and these personalities can be both in business and your personal life. Sometimes you exhibit traits of one more than another, and sometimes you're one way at work and you're one way at home, and it's just kind of the nature of the surroundings and where you are. So I'm going to talk about the 3. I'll list out the characteristics, and then you can figure out which one you are, which one you predominantly work under, and then I'll talk about how that impacts your personal life, your professional life, and then ways to team up for more productivity. So working as a team and really understanding the different productivity types and how different people work, it's beneficial to you to get more done. So we'll talk about that a little bit more too. So to start, I have paper if you want to take notes, if anyone wants just to take notes on which type, when I list out the characteristics, because I'm going to talk about the 3. Does anyone feel like they're very productive? Like, you see yourself, Stephanie, do you feel like
if I wasn't, I would
you're
never.
on it?
Most of the time, yeah. Most of the time I feel pretty
accomplished?
on it, but there's also days where I feel like I want to be left alone and I get nothing done. I'm not gonna lie, but most days if I'm not productive, I feel like everything would go, ooh,
Yeah, I think a lot of it falls on us as women, especially if we have children, to get everything done, and it seems to create a lot of pressure for us. And where we do feel like our lives are out of balance and we're struggling, and we tend to get into these habits that I'm going to kind of talk about with the productivity types. So the first one is either the entrepreneur, if you're kind of a business, or / the ideas guru is what I call it. So the ideas person. This person is someone who's, you may know this person or be this person yourself, who's constantly coming up with new ideas, constantly trying to find new ways to do things. And it's just constant, it's like you can see their brain, it's just constantly moving. They're very creative. They have a need for change. They're always changing things up, rearranging the furniture, changing the way the business is structured, looking for new opportunities. It's a constant thing with them. They tend to live in the future and ignore the past and what's happened in the past. They don't pay a lot of attention to details. So someone who's an ideas person, entrepreneur personality, they're coming up with the ideas and not really paying attention as to how you can implement them and make them happen. So they tend to, because of that, create a lot of havoc around them, a mess. My ex-husband, I won't mention it, someone else in my life used to have great ideas, constantly would implement these big projects, and wouldn't pay attention to the details. And I was constantly the one going back and cleaning everything up, which creates a lot of frustration. But that tends to be the ideas person. So the farther ahead this person is in terms of coming up with ideas, and then the people who are helping him or her implement them, it gets harder and harder to keep up. It's like they just get to be so far ahead of the pack. And this type of person tends to crave control, so likes to control the things that are going on around them, because they need to be able to control things that are in the present so that they can keep planning for the future. So unfortunately, what happens sometimes with this personality is that she may tend to bully other people, boss people around, harass them to get a project done that they're working on implementing. Maybe it's something around the house, maybe it's something at work, because they're getting frustrated and they want to get going. But they do get a lot done, and they're constantly looking for opportunities. They see everything as an opportunity. The second one, the second personality type, is the one that's it's kind of like the middle personality is what I think of it as. It's more of the manager, the organizer, maybe the momager if you have kids, the one who's organizing all of that. They're very pragmatic. Without the manager figuring things out and putting things together, there wouldn't be any planning, there wouldn't be any order, no predictability. Everything would be chaos, a mess. Closets wouldn't get organized because they like to organize and have everything in place. Kind of like Monica on Friends.
Yes.
She thrives on that and gets very excited. So they crave order, and they do cling more to status quo, to having things stay the same a little bit more. Once they create order, they want to keep it that way. And they tend to, if they're a project person and going to build their dream house, they tend to stay in their dream house. So they create what they want, whereas the ideas person is one of those people who tends to create the house. So they tend to like to have rows of order for things. The entrepreneur, they create the neat, orderly rows of things, and the manager puts it in rows. So they're organizing it. And then they tend to be the ones who clean up after the entrepreneurs. So the entrepreneur is coming up with the ideas, or the idea person, and the manager is the one who's cleaning it up afterwards. And the third type is in business, it's more of the technical person, or what I also call it, the doer. So it's the person doing the work. And we need all three of these personalities in business and in life, because they all have different characteristics and traits, and when you put them all together, they can be very successful. When you have one by itself, there tends to be problems. So a mistake that a lot of the doers make when they're starting their own businesses, for example, they are good at baking cakes and pies, or they're a good engineer, or they're very technical. They think that because they're doing such a good job and they know their work, they know all the other pieces about business, and then they find themselves getting stuck. So sometimes they don't like to be bossed around because they know what they need to get done, but they also get stuck. So the doer has the attitude, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. They love to tinker and take things apart and put them back together again. So the entrepreneur or the ideas person, they tend to live in the future. The manager tends to live in the past and be frustrated about things that happened in the past, while the doer person is living in the present and looking at everything that needs to get done. They love to work on one thing at a time. So if you know anyone or yourself or someone who, when everything's getting thrown at you at one time, it tends to be overwhelming. That's more of a doer personality where you like to work on one thing at a time, get it done, and then move on to the next thing. They don't like change. Not a change person. That's frustrating. So they don't like the ideas person coming to them and wanting to change the way that they're living and the way that they're doing things in business or the way things are happening at home. They don't want to constantly move because they like to keep things the same. So, let's see, they're more of an individualist, more of the worker bee, the backbone. The doers are really important because they get things done. Let's see, the entrepreneur or the ideas person, they create new and interesting work for the doer to do. They create new, interesting things for them to do, but they tend a lot of times not to get along. So in a perfect world, it's a perfect situation, but the doer doesn't really, like I said, like to be told what to do. They get upset about being interrupted because they need to get other things done. And so the manager also annoys the doer because he's determined to impose order on things. And the doer thinks they already know what they need to be doing, and they don't want to be a part of the system, and they don't like it when the systems are imposed on them. And so they see that as being very cold, dehumanizing, and impersonal when those things are imposed on them. So the manager sees work as a system of results, and the doer is the integral part. And the doer is a problem to be managed is how the manager sees it. Like, this person needs to be managed and needs to be told what to do because they're not doing the right things. And the manager is a meddler to be avoided by the doer. So they get upset because they're getting sick and tired of being bossed around. Don't tell me what to do. It's like a teenager, actually. Don't tell me what to do. I have a child who's she's a senior in high school. Don't tell her what to do. All of a sudden, anyway, it's a phase they go through, but she's been interesting. So, and the doer sees the world from the bottom up rather than the top down. And so they're always trying to catch up. So those are the three personalities, the main personalities. You may be one of them very heavily. You may have parts of each of them. A lot of times we're struggling internally, and we tend to, a lot of us become doers, and we tend to be the one who's getting things done while ignoring everything else. I work on this in business, but then also in your personal life. So what happens is that's when we really get out of balance, because a lot of times we're looking at our lives and the things that we need to get done, and it starts to stack up against us, and we become out of balance, and we become frustrated, and we ignore people around us and in our lives who maybe have those personalities. We make excuses sometimes for why this person can get away with doing all these new things. Well, we can't because we have this situation in front of us. Maybe we have kids, maybe we're a single mom. Can relate?
I can relate because this is my company right here.
Oh, is it really?
So the people I work with.
of the people you work with. So all of the personalities are very important. We need the doer to do the stuff that we need to get done. Not everybody's willing to do the work. We need the manager to work in between the two to organize things and to create systems and to create a more efficient process. And then we need someone to come up with ideas, to give us ideas on how to, if it's a company, how to focus the direction of where you're going and come up with different things to sell or different ways to do business. But the same holds true in your personal life. So a lot of us get very, very stuck. And I know a lot of people who've been in this place where they're doing the work and they have themselves so buried and they think they can't get to the next space, the next stage. And then you ask them a critical question, where is it you want to be? And they don't know how to answer that because they're so busy doing the work that they haven't taken the time to think about it. So what I find a lot of times, especially with women, that's the situation that they're in. They know they're not happy with wherever things are going, but they don't know how to get to the next step. And so it's really important that, for one thing, kind of the reason why I told the story in the beginning, because I was here last time and I had this big thing happen, but at the same time, I had to be able to let go of what was going on, with all of the things I needed to get done and to change plans, and I had to be able to call on people within my life to help me get things done, to team up with me, so that I could still function as a mother, even though I wasn't really doing the work, but someone was there to pick up my kids, to take them to dinner. I rescheduled things, you know, that's something that comes up that needs to get done, and a lot of times as women, we take it upon ourselves to want to be the ones to do it all ourselves and to not ask for help. But there's times that we need to do that, and especially when things aren't perfect in the way we want them to be, sometimes we end up complaining to our friends, this sucks because I'm not doing this sucks, that sucks. And we don't stop to listen and to take the feedback from them as to what we could do. Because if we look at the people in our lives as well, there's people with the different personalities. And I know that there's some people I can call for ideas, like Noelle, for example, since she's in the room, she's excellent for coming up with ideas. And I will call her when I'm going through things and, you know, business related. Why don't you try this? Why don't you do that? Not everything's gonna work, but it's great to have someone in my life and to be able to team up with someone and to come up with ideas, because I'm not an ideas person. I don't know if you have an idea of which one I am predominantly.
You're the manager. I think you're a manager.
More of the manager, yeah. I'm more of the manager. I'm also a doer a little bit, but I like to create the process, which is what I do, is create process. The boring work that nobody really wants to do, and they all say they need to get it done and they don't do it. Create the process for businesses so they can run more efficiently, and take the ideas that the ideas person is coming up with and find ways to implement them. Yeah, I tend to be, I know I'm not an ideas person. And so I have to implement some of the technical or the doer things into my day and into my life to get more done, so that I can be more. Can you see people in your lives with the different personalities? Mm-hmm. And do you think that, do you tend to ignore some of the things that they say, or because, especially the doer, they tend to think they know everything, right? And this person doesn't know the answer because of this, or this. Do you see a lot of that? Any thoughts or any ideas of how to work better with the people around you, whether it be work or whether it be your personal life? Any thoughts?
I'm having a really hard time pinpointing like who's what, you know, like for example, for myself, I see myself in kind of all of those.
And sometimes you are.
And so I'm not really sure, but I'm the same with my husband. Like I'm not really sure where he's at either. Or like Karen, I know Karen extremely well after 10 years or more. whatever it is. And basically, she's all those at different points. So I'm having a hard time kind of pinpointing. So how do you really pinpoint that?
Okay, so sometimes it's really good to have a lot of those because you're more balanced. But in certain areas of your life, you might be more of the doer. In certain areas of your life, you might not. Like, I know personally the ideas, and I get tired. And in other areas, I don't. In some areas, I tend to do more. In some places, I tend to manage more, or I forget. I have to do more of the management. So it's looking at, so if you get a lot done and you're pretty productive and you're paying attention, so a lot of us don't really pay attention to the whole balance cycle. We're out of balance, we're unhappy, maybe we're frustrated, maybe we're more emotional on some days. It's like this roller coaster cycle. And so a lot of times as women, we don't pay attention to that. But once we start really focusing on where we are, we can draw ourselves back and get us better balanced on the circle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because there's things that happen in my life where I'm frustrated all the time and I can't figure out what the problem is. And then I'll look back and say, it's because of this situation. So things will come along and throw us out. And then it's really focusing on getting back in there. And in terms of teaming up, it's really important to be able to talk to people and to have those resources in your life to help you get to where you want to be. So a lot of times, like I said, vision. I work with clients on vision and understanding what their vision is and where they want to go. So that's great to have that vision and know where to go, but you have to take the steps and climb the ladder to get there, and you have to think through where you're needing to go or how you're going to get there. So like sometimes weight loss, last year, I had a plan for myself. I wanted to lose so much weight by a certain date. That was my goal, my vision for what I wanted for myself, and I came up with a plan to get there. Each step I was going to check in with myself, and I had these milestones to achieve, and then I spent time focusing on how I was going to get there, what I was going to eat. So a lot of times we say I want to lose 20 pounds, and we'll go into it without a plan. So we need all the steps. I needed to have the vision, I needed to come up with my plan, and then I needed to implement.
So the way I see this, like say for business, because I can definitely see myself as entrepreneur idea, a little bit of an organizer. Implementing is not my strong suit, so I need staff. I need assistants. I need, my team is amazing in real estate. We have virtual assistants. So because usually real estate agents are good at everything except like the nitty gritty. And the way I look at this is I always call it ABC work. So A work is what you love to do, the ideas, it's what's your passionate, and the B work is organizing and getting it all done. C work, for me, is like filing, making sure receipts are where they need to be, and documents are checked off. So I think for that, what would be helpful is if you know that you are an entrepreneur, or you know that you're a doer, how do you find those other resources and other people to bring them into your life, so then that way your systems are A, B, and C.
That's a good question.
Because you might not have these friends and you might not have this spouse. So how do you recognize those signs in other people to bring them in?
So it's looking at the people you have in your life. So you may have conversations, and sometimes we don't recognize that they're there. But they are there, and it's if you surrounded yourself and then expanding your circles and finding other groups to go to who maybe share some of the same ideas that you have or the place that you want to go. It's also about reading and learning and growing yourself in that area. So if you're not good at ideas, it's coming up with different places.
Wait, I can hear you.
That's really
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a lot of recognizing what maybe you're not so great at,
Yes.
and then just trying to find people that are great at
their
those things and bring them in. You know, networking groups are great. I know my husband's very much a doer, and I'm everything else.
Right.
So I think that we actually have a really good system, but he gets very frustrated by things, and I get very frustrated.
Yes.
So I see areas where I need to be a little bit more this, and he needs to be a little bit more that, so that way the frustration goes away. Not that he'll ever be, you know, A, B, or C
Right.
predominantly, or neither will I. But it's just recognizing, I think, where you're lacking and where you're excelling, so you can match up with people like that.
Right, and you can get more done. And so that is very key, is recognizing that about yourself and the other person, because all it leads to is a bunch of frustration. And because we have these different personality types, and they're all beneficial, they all have great purposes, and sometimes they get out of control. Like I don't know, there's sometimes, you know, the ideas person who just, it's constant, like they're constant. You can see them thinking when you're talking to them, and that's a great personality, but sometimes they need to kind of be reined in a little bit, or they need to recognize that and find someone to help them implement, or continue on that way forever. But what happens is, if you don't incorporate those other personalities, there's something that's not getting done. So this is the whole productivity piece in terms of making changes in your personal life. You want to be able to go on this vacation, make so much money, have the house, do all of these volunteer things, you know, do this other work, but you're stuck in a rut, and so it's really important to be able to step out there, because you're really not getting anything done. So that's the new productivity piece, is just looking at how you get things done from a different perspective. And so, yeah, it's important to find those people and to just keep expanding your horizons, because a lot of people, sometimes you have the people in your lives who frustrate you, like constantly. Like 90% of the conversation is frustrating, but man, they have some good ideas, or man, they have good stories, and it's really recognizing the positives, I think, in people who are in your life, because we all do have those people, and we tend to get stuck in our ways instead of looking at that and figuring out how we can incorporate it into what we're doing. Are there any other questions about I have no idea where my time is. I think I'm probably
yeah.
about up.
Just a
Oh,
few.
we have 4 minutes. We have
Okay.
to wrap it up.
One thought is that, you know, I'm a doer, but I'm also a manager. And I think sometimes I get bullied into doing other things. And so how do you get people who want you to do more things than the others to just stop reining you in and doing something?
That's where you have to recognize it within yourself.
Yeah.
And then, because you're a manager, so that's an internal struggle a bit. You have to start exercising the power to say no and finding ways to manage it within the system and put it somewhere else. So it's really, a lot of times as women, especially as women, we struggle with saying no, and we feel bad. We think they're going to think we're a jerk. We feel guilty, but then we get stuck, and then we're upset because we didn't get the things done that we needed to do. And so it's really, the one thing, if you have a boatload of stuff that you feel like is piled on you, what I always suggest is tackling the one thing and getting rid of that, the one problem, the one thing you need to do. Whatever that one thing is, that's either going to give you the greatest ease, the greatest pleasure, or take away the biggest pain in your neck. I was talking to someone the other day about her business, and she was talking about, there's the one employee, she started talking it through, and it's really taking those people and talking it through as well, people in your life, but she was talking through her employee issues, and she realized that one person who's causing 90% of the pain. So she's looking at it going, okay, if he's not going to fix these problems, then I need to reevaluate what he's doing in this company and go from there. So it's working on that one big thing that's going to tie into the other pieces, if that makes sense.
Do you mind if I add on to that too? So there's another philosophy that we use both at this company and at our previous company, and that is also prioritization. And so we had what we referred to as priority objectives. There were no more than 5 for the entire company. That's it. And if we could keep it to 3, we would. And those 3 were the same priority objectives that every solitary department had to follow. And obviously, you have to get your corporation to buy in on that, your company to buy in on that first. That's the first thing. But the other thing that we used to do, we used to ask ourselves, what if it doesn't meet the priority objectives? It's like, it's not a priority, so we're not doing it. And that gave us the freedom to say no to a lot of things. That's the first thing. The second thing is, well, what if it just fell on the floor? And we just had this thing, what if it just fell on the floor? Is someone else gonna pick it up? Is it really that important? Is something really gonna be missed? Or could we do it just in time? And it was hard for all the women in our last company to let things fall on the floor. All the women, the men had no problems doing it. And then we all said, well, let's try it. Let's just try it. And believe it or not, someone else either picked it up or it really wasn't that important. Our perception of it was that it was so like, it was like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. And it really wasn't. And it helped us prioritize and really understand what was going on. And then also, when you prioritize things, you can go back to the other parties and say, okay, so what is it that you want me to give up on my schedule? And that's also, you don't have to say no. You're forcing that other person to actually identify, maybe you can't take this on because these are all important. And you give them the ability to either take it and do it, hire somebody else to do it, do whatever. But that was huge in our organization. And it was ironic that the women were all like, oh, we need to do it all. And really, it really didn't matter. Some things didn't. As long as the customers were satisfied and as long as the partners were given what they needed, it didn't matter.
Yeah, as women, we struggle with that. That's a huge, huge, huge thing. But it is the prioritization in terms of having the buy-in with your company needs to be, that's a whole other
Goes back to
area.
your vision statement.
Yeah. Yep. So, great. Noelle, I have just, if anyone's interested in filling this out, like I just brought like a little mini kind of survey, but if you have something that works well or you think there's something more that would be interesting in the future, or if you know of any businesses or any groups that are looking for